Hey guys, this week's podcast features Niko Georgiadis, Tom Jablonski, and Chad Vosseller of Lockhouse Distillery. We went to their location at the Pierce Aero Building where the guys talked with Donnie about making booze, their grape vodka, and their future plans with the distillery. Let's get to it.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your probably crazy schedules right now to have us down here. Just because there's so many guys, why don't you just introduce yourself and what you do at Lockhouse? I guess we'll start with Niko.
I'm Niko Georgiadis. I guess I'm the president, and I do the day-to-day distilling activities here.
Okay.
I'm Chad Vosseller. I'm vice president. I do ordering, equipment research, recipes, things like that, production manager.
Nice.
Kind of position.
And I'm Thomas Jablonski. I'm the business manager, and I'm responsible for the financial back end and for most of the marketing.
Nice. So you guys all have your specific roles, I guess you could say, in the company?
Yeah.
And then there's a fourth guy too, right? Or
there is, yes.
Okay.
He's John Miro. He's our fourth partner, and he's responsible primarily for our artwork and design work.
Oh, okay.
His role is generally art director, so he designed our logo and the labels that we've submitted, etc.
I'm a big fan of the logo. Like, I think it came out really well.
Thank you. We're really happy with it too. It particularly given the fact that we had to come up with an entirely new one midstream.
Oh, really?
Well, between 8 Buffalo Spirits and
right.
Lockhouse.
Yeah.
So we're happy with how well that came together, yes.
Yeah, it came out good. So the Kickstarter kind of ended not too long ago at this point, or like a month or so?
Yeah, the Kickstarter was done it was close to the beginning of August, so I think it was either the last week in July, the first week in August. It took us a little bit of time to get everybody's responses for getting their T-shirt sizes, among other things.
I believe I told you at the bar the other night, but I apologize for being in Italy and not responding to my survey.
Donnie here is actually one of our latest responders. I had to hunt him down on another continent.
Yeah, but it worked out.
But within the last week or so, we got all the rest of the orders in. So
nice.
We're happy with how the Kickstarter turned out, and we're getting everything ordered. We're in the process of getting everything ordered for the rewards, so they should be out relatively
soon. Did you guys have any idea that it would have been as popular as it was? Because there's been a couple of food and beer Buffalo Kickstarters, but all of them squeaked it out with a day. You guys doubled. Were you expecting that?
We were scared. There was a couple meetings in here where there was a lot of, I guess, needless worrying about if we do 75, is that too much? And, we didn't
want to come off as being hubristic, but also we didn't want if you overshoot or if you put a number that's too high and you don't make it, obviously it doesn't get funded at all. And we were afraid if we went potentially too low as well, then obviously we need, or given the immense amount of barrels we're going to eventually be using, the more is better, of course. So obviously we didn't want to undershoot it either, because people then would think that that was all that we needed.
Yeah, we probably spent way too much time actually talking about what our funded, quote unquote, would actually be.
Was there a lot of numbers okay, we have this many Facebook fans, and if
we did that, we're if we could actually get 200 people to buy a T-shirt, that will equal
Well, we actually had a number that we knew of that would supply us with enough barrels, the amount of barrels that we wanted. But we did at the same time we didn't want it to be that low and.
But it's just after that first week, we were off to we funded half of it within 7 days, and or half of our goal within 7 days, and we didn't even know what to make of that. I mean, we were just fortunate. We've had an amazing outpouring of support from people, in the city and really everywhere. We had, I would say a third to a half of the responses were Buffalo, or people who at some point lived in Buffalo, and who've gone away. But there's half of those responses of people that we have no idea who they are, and we're shipping stuff across country. So we obviously we got some good business from just people liking the video on Kickstarter, and people catching the marketing in some other way. But
we got to thank Justin Bondi making that video.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, it was a good video. It really.
We was also, I think we put together a good rewards package. I think that's where a lot of people might go wrong with Kickstarter. I guess.
Yeah, you guys have some pretty kick-ass rewards.
We put some thought into it. You know what I mean? We couldn't by law give away alcohol, or not by law, but by
law and by the Kickstarter.
And by Kickstarter, you can't just
Oh, really? Kickstarter won't let you?
Yeah, I'll tell you. They even we're part of one of the rewards, like I think it's the $75 reward level was to name a vodka batch after whatever you wanted, right? Anything that was like non-commercial or not offensive. So we're part of that. We wanted to put in the description of it that people would have the opportunity to come in and purchase bottles from their batch, because some of these batches are going to be 6 months from now. But we wanted to let people know that they would be notified when their batch came up. We'd have a couple bottles set aside in the retail store, and they wouldn't even let us say that. They said that it made it sound like we were selling alcohol.
But we're saying it now because Kickstarter's done. So
we've collected the money. So just so you know, if you bought either a vodka batch or a barrel, we'll set aside bottles for you.
We're planning on setting aside at least two for each person that did a batch, and we'll give them a certain amount of time to pick that up.
Nice.
I've seen some people just be like, "Oh, for this much money, I'll give you a shout out or something." It's like, no, you had to actually give people stuff back. I'll let you buy my product. You go, no, it's not. It worked. I think our lowest thing was we put a plaque with your name on the bar.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that everybody who donated got that. So some people put that as a really high, you're a gold donor and you're there forever. But we wanted this. I mean, even beyond the Kickstarter, the support that we've gotten, regardless, has been Buffalo centric, and it's been from people that we know, or people who are in the community, and people who appreciate local products, local produce, so on and so forth.
That's definitely something on the rise. I mean, you even see the success with Community Beer Works, and they're outgrowing their space already, pretty much.
I think we've already outgrown our space too.
But we wanted everybody that donated anything to be a part of our distillery
forever. That's going to go
to the distillery, because I mean, starting a distillery or anything alcohol based is, I don't know if anybody knows this, but it's hemorrhaging money for a very long time with no income whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of regulation.
Yeah. So all the people that actually helped us, we want to reward them. And even when we move out of this space, like right here on the bar, I know you can't. People listening can't see it, but there on the bar where we're putting all the plaques is going to move with us to the next space, and then the next space after that, and so
that's really cool. That's a really cool thing to do. So how? Okay, I know that. So when I first heard about you guys, it was when you guys were called 8 Buffalo Spirits, and that was, I feel, a while ago. I feel like this has been in motion for quite some time.
A year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a year and a half, even a little bit more now, because you were coming home from New York in 2000, at the very end of 2010, so October, November. That was when the discussions started. So we're probably we're approaching 2 years now, for sure. So we actually formed the company in January of 2011.
Oh, okay, wow.
So there was some discussion for the 2 months preceding that. We took a trip to New York into the Hudson Valley to go tour some distilleries. We went to Kings County, which was at the time one of the only in New York. There's subsequently added quite a few, particularly in Brooklyn. But Kings County was the first in New York City, not the first in New York State. And also we went on that trip, which was in early December of 2010, to see Hudson Valley, Tuttletown.
Yeah.
And went to see, where they make Hudson whiskey.
They were the first in New York.
And they were the first in New York.
Wow.
So that was when we decided. We got legal counsel at the end of that December. We formed the company in January.
Was this like a thing where you guys knew that you kind of had this in mind, or were you just going on a distillery tour just to go on a distillery tour?
No, we went to see that it was a sound idea.
Oh, okay.
It was something that I was kind of messing with as a hobbyist. And then I was hearing in different programs like this or whatever that people were making pretty good with it, and then it was like, okay, let's go see how they're doing.
We could be just kind of honest with it. Niko had just moved back from New York, and was kind of trying to find his bearings, right? And I put him up for a while, let him live with me while he was looking for an apartment or whatever. And he came home one night and he's like, "I got it." I'm like, "What do you got?" He's like, "I'm going to make my own liquor," and I said, "Hey, I'm in." I mean, it was kind of as simple as that, and then from there we went to places like New York and Hudson and the Finger Lakes to see what other people were doing, And Kings County was very small at the time when we visited, and it kind of showed us like how doable it was. They were even using like craft stills, and they were proud of it, like little 8-gallon, I think it was. And then we went to visit Hudson, which was like the big boys, like the guys that had been open for a while, like what it could potentially be.
Even then, they'd only been open for 4 years at that point.
And they had just gotten an investment from was it Glenfiddich or
Glenfiddich, I think. Yeah.
Glenfiddich, yeah. They had just got an investment, and they were like doubling or tripling the size of their operation at that time. So we kind of got to see them. They were building the new building. They were talking about what they were going to be doing for the expansion, et cetera. Yeah. So we kind of got to see between Kings County, which had just really started up a year and a half before, and they were already in the process of moving or beginning to move into a much bigger space in the Brooklyn Naval Yard. But we got to see, people operating and actually this business being successful, both at the very startup phase, the Kings County phase, where they were operating at 300 square feet, and they were paying probably 5 times the rent we're paying in this space, right? And they were making money, and they were making a good product, and they were making money. So we saw that from the onset what the start looks like, and we got to see, in the Hudson Valley what was possible. Yeah.
And I just went and visited them again, and they're doing very well. They just bought new stills from Scotland, big, beautiful alembic stills, and I mean,
it's a hard thing to break into, but what made it possible was what Hudson did is they lobbied for a law to make a farm distiller's license, which is what we're operating under right now.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I mean, if you're not going to start with that, with what the license we have, you got to have a ton of money. And you got to, and it's a hard thing to invest in. This is the kind of business where you actually think it's better to start small and build slowly. So, you know what you're doing, and it's difficult to go to a bank and say, give me $500,000 to start a Class A distillery in New York State. And by the way, the whiskey's going to take 3 years to age, and I can't pay
By the way, we're not going
to
get any return on investment whatsoever for 3 to 5 years. If we're lucky, if that batch works.
The small $128 license was kind of the golden ticket. We're like, okay, we can afford that.
But before this law, it was $128,000.
Yeah.
So like them lobbying this.
Wow.
Yeah. So Hudson's actually the people who made that change. So but from Prohibition from the start of Prohibition to, well, really the end of Prohibition to, I think 2007 was the initial change of the law, and 2009 was when they opened it up to everybody.
Yeah.
Hudson lobbied, and they kind of did a trial period for Hudson, and then it sort of was opened up due to Hudson's lobbying to anybody who wanted to pay the fee and go and jump through the hoops, which are not insignificant hoops. But from the end of Prohibition to now, because the New York State and a lot of the states in the Northeast had no interest in the business of liquor production because it was so centered around organized crime. They spent all kinds of time after Prohibition trying to clean that up. They made the barrier to entry. It was like in today's adjusted terms, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for the license. You couldn't make a profit. You couldn't turn a profit in that environment. Yeah. So they just changed it, and that's what kind of gave us the opening to step in and do this. And we saw, there had been none in Buffalo since Prohibition. We saw the opportunity, and we figured it was the right time to strike.
Yeah. So were all of you kind of liquor fans before? Like, were like a kind of.
I think it's safe to say we were all well,
aside from like Crown and Coke. Like, I mean, like, did you guys like appreciate?
Well, I think we were all we took some of this idea or some of the inspiration for this came from the success of Vera.
Yeah.
We were all there kind of from the beginning of that process, and we saw first of all, hats off to Cameron and John and everybody who was involved in that. But we saw how successful what the whiskey sort of revolution had become, and we certainly partook in it ourselves. So we saw that as a.
Well, we saw the whiskey boom kind of starting to happen again. It happened with with beer and all the micro breweries popping up and stuff. It's kind of happening now with whiskey and small distilleries.
It's definitely a gold rush kind of thing, like with how many have popped up in the last couple of years.
Oh, like the microbreweries?
Microdistilleries,
we were very relieved when we were in the licensing process for this, is making sure that we got the first one around. So we'd always have that claim to fame.
There's stats that I don't exactly know off the top of my head, but in 2010 there was 8 distilleries, and now there's like 250 in New York.
Oh, geez.
It's crazy, and it's kind of becoming like the brewery micro beer boom too, because
which is great, because by everyone that gets added, it adds more people who are potentially interested in it and are interested in trying other ones. So whereas probably 10 years ago there might have only been a top 10 of whiskeys, of all varietals that people would have drank. Now people are really interested the same way that they're interested in craft beer, in local or more regional products, both from the perspective of living in that region and in living in other regions, sampling things that are from the Northeast or from the Southwest, and so on and so forth. So it's really kind of opened up a lot of opportunities.
And people are experimenting too, like just what happened in craft beer movement, like people started stepping out of the norm. That's kind of what's happening here too, with things like hopped vodkas and hopped whiskeys and different kinds of
interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Crazy fermentations and stuff like that, which we think is really cool.
Well, it's kind of weird. Like craft breweries, like home brewing is a thing. Like a lot of people can home brew. It's been legal since like the 70s and everything. The idea of starting a distillery seems like kind of way harder, because like there's not a lot of home distilling, I would assume.
Because it's very illegal.
No, monstrously illegal. You need a federal license.
Am I basically describing moonshine at that point?
Yeah, well, I mean, you need a federal license to own a still, technically, and run a still.
Yeah.
But I mean, to anyone out there, a federal license it's free. If it just they're kind of the paperwork is messy to get.
You can get them for making ethanol too. If you're making fuel and stuff like that, you can distill, but you have to get licensed, and it's a felony. If you do it, so we can't technically say that we were doing it before we were licensed.
So you have to basically start a business and then figure out your recipes after you've already started the business?
That is exactly that is a 100% accurate statement.
That's insane. That's a kind of a ridiculous
Which is why the proliferation, although it's speeding up, was still pretty slow, because people who were starting this had either had some experience in the past, and there's
worked at a distillery
or were brewers, brewing. If you have brewing experience, it's sort of a half step to this, right? Like it's
more than that. I mean, really, if you want to make whiskey, all you got to do is boil beer through a still. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
They're fermenting and
minus
starch
hops.
conversions.
Minus
the hops.
I mean, it's 3.
But it's
90%
the same process,
of the process.
to make a mash is effectively the beginning of the same process of making beer.
Yeah.
There are additional steps to make a beer that would be consumable by the public, but it's the same equation. So that being said, so there are people who are brewers who are interested in converting over. There are people who are winemakers. So you see a lot now in New York State. Like Finger Lakes was the first one in New York, but there are winemakers all over the state who are opening their farm distilleries because they already have some of the process. Because quite frankly, to make our vodka, it's effectively fermented grapes, so it's fermented wine. So they're already halfway there. So to get to that next step isn't so out of the realm. But still, it's not.
It is dangerous to do. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bitching about like all these federal regulations. If I turn my back on that thing that's running behind us right now and the pumps fail, hitting the light switch, we can do some damage, And also, if you don't know what you're doing with your cuts, you could make poison, you know what I mean? You could end up drinking. If you're at home, like, I don't want anyone listening to this to think like, oh, I've brewed beer before at home, so I'm just going to start.
I could totally make it.
I just want to be clear, like, there's
Well, if you know anything about chemicals, the first 3 things that come off the still are aldehyde, acetone, and methanol.
We cut those off here at
we do
Lockhouse Distillery, just so we're
methanol is one of the things during Prohibition when people made bathtub gin that made you go blind. It actually deteriorates the rear lobe of your brain and will eventually make you go blind, but not in the amounts that we do, and we cut all those out. I mean, but it's part of knowing how to distill, and it's part of learning. But the good thing is that we obviously live in the information age, and there is so much information out there, and you can learn from other people's mistakes. So if you're dorky enough and get on 5 forums like I am, just even like home distilling forums and home brewing forums and stuff like that, I mean, you can learn from other people's mistakes and not make those mistakes, and there's a lot to learn too. Even if you there's organizations you can join that give you literature on distilling and the safeties and
do classes and provide spreadsheets for how to for recipes and yields and things like that.
Plus there's just a lot, like, it's a good community. I have just randomly reached out to on Facebook and wherever on the internet, whoever I can find, to distillers who are the nicest people in the world. It's not like it's never been for me. Not yet has been like
trade secrets. Or
there's one or two things that people
there's
covet
things that you hold back.
Yeah, there's one or two things, but I mean, for the most part, like Chip Tate from Balcones helped me out a lot. Derek Bell from Corsair helped me out a lot. John Little from Smooth Ambler helped us out tremendously. Visited our distillery.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good community. Instead of being like all the little guys against each other, it's almost like a mentality of all the little guys against the huge guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not always that too. Like, I'll drink the big guys too, but for the most part, I enjoy drinking small, like seeing what people are doing differently. I mean, it's been done the same for so long that like experimentation and doing it with in smaller batches makes for such a different whiskey, because it's just like the same thing. Like, if you make them in huge batches, your pH and things like that are going to stay very stable. It's hard to fluctuate. But when you make it in smaller batches, it fluctuates a lot more with heat and stuff. That can make a more complex whiskey or a complex ferment, and what different things do temperature wise and to fermentation is really cool. So I'd almost rather than drink the big whiskey that I've been drinking for years, and their whole thing is to have consistency.
Yeah, it tastes the same as it did last year.
I like the whiskeys that almost have vintages, like wines, that I know aren't going to be the most consistent thing in the world, but I find that interesting to taste.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think that's what a lot of people like about. I mean, artisanal products is like on the rise. Like, I mean, even in Buffalo, you can see in the last 4 years, like, people don't mind either spending a little bit more or knowing more of the story behind what they're
consuming. What does Buffalo have if they don't have pride? I mean, look at the bills. Look at
I'm 38.
It's a backlash to it's a backlash to like processed everything. Since the 60s and 70s, it's a return to form that I mean that we're gonna have it. That stuff will be on store shelves, universe willing, with the next couple of weeks, and that just came out of our still right now. I mean, it's not something that was produced in some factory in some unknown whatever. Like, that's something that you can actually viscerally taste, feel, and understand where it came from and what it's made from. So I think
it's local, no additives, no anything.
Nice.
It's from local good people. Other people with small businesses trying to
Sure.
Yeah. So the other kind of thing that's kind of crazy about like starting a distillery is like, obviously whiskey is known as like an aged product, and like you guys alluded, like you're making a product that you're not going to sell for at least a couple of years.
Well, that's the thing we're really excited about. I can't speak for both of them, but that's the thing I'm most excited about. But we needed something to supplement, it's something for income, and vodka is popular around here, and I enjoy vodka. I drink it a lot, and I think some of the best vodkas are made from grapes. It makes for a very smooth vodka.
Nice.
If you haven't drank vodka made from grapes, there's a couple brands out there. I hope you wait for ours, but it is a different animal. That's one of the reasons we chose to do this. We have to make vodka in order to stay afloat until the whiskey.
But I want to say that despite the fact that we had to make it in order to keep the lights on, or at least during the startup, because again, to kind of reiterate, we had to spend a year getting licensing, probably a half year getting approval for other things, which was like label, et cetera, which is what we're in the middle of now, which I'm sure we'll cover later. But and then on top of that, there's gonna have to be the aging period. So we have to have something to start, making back the investment and to start, paying the loans off, among other things. So knowing that vodka was going to have to happen, we wanted to make the best vodka possible. So it wasn't we didn't want it to be a throwaway thing and just be like, well, we have to do this, so let's just get through it. We wanted to make something high quality that people would really appreciate.
And we were actually pleasantly surprised at how good grape distillate came out. We knew that Hudson was using apples. We knew that some other people were, using grapes, but and we really enjoy it now.
And we
concentrated on it for a long time, doing, trying this kind of grape, trying that kind of grape, or whatever. But we really enjoy it. And the whole thing is, I mean, if we're going to pay a little bit more for local grapes, then we don't want to strip every piece of character out of it. We don't want it to just taste like nothing. Some of those vodka companies out there just want you to taste nothing.
I think they pride themselves that they...
Yeah, so if we're going to spend all this money buying local product, we're not just going to strip the hell out of it and just let you have, ethanol. What we want to do is we want you to taste the character of the grape on the front of your palate and then for it to finish smooth,
Nice.
And have a little bit of that grape character in it. And I think we've really accomplished that. And I know people can give us feedback, but we're excited to let more people try it and see what they think.
And to speak to some of that decision making, we actually the very, very first thing we were thinking about doing was somewhat like Hudson. We were talking about doing an apple-based vodka, but that spring when we first got started, so that January we formed the company, and by April we were already talking about plans. That spring there was that it was that really late frost that killed all the apple trees, and we're like, so that wouldn't have been good if we were in the middle of producing and our supply was of local apples. So we decided that maybe that wasn't the best approach, and that led us to the grapes, which has turned into a boon for us.
Nice. What would the first batch, I guess, or so of the vodka, was there a kind of hesitant, I really hope this works out?
Of course.
Because we all stared at that
because we've come so far since then too. I mean, through different filtering techniques, different filtering units, different ways of distilling it, and how many times we distilled it. We toyed with distilling it once, distilling it twice, 3 times, whatever. Right now it's probably at the equivalent of 5 or 6 because we're using column stills. But there was a fine line between stripping the hell out of it and making something with a little bit of character, something that's worthy of the produce. I kind of hate it's worthy of the grapes that we were getting, the local ingredients that we were using.
Nice.
So that it's while at the same time still being just a good vodka.
Yeah. So what is the plans then, I guess, for the whiskeys and things like that? Obviously the Kickstarter helped with the barrels.
Yeah, so that was a huge thing. We had spent the money on the equipment. We didn't really spare our expense on equipment for what we wanted to do. So
it's a pretty looking machine.
We think it is. We think it's real pretty. We bought what we needed to. We didn't allow ourselves to skimp on that stuff. But as a result, from a capital perspective, we spent all this money on these fixed goods that are going to be around for a while, but we didn't, the stuff that works consumables, like barrels, we didn't really have money in the budget for that. We were planning on, as the vodka started selling, using it to buy barrels, but we started to look at the numbers more and more, and we just realized, given the lead time on buying barrels, and given that you have to buy them in bulk, we had to start planning for it, and we had to come up with another income source in order to do it, which is what led us to the Kickstarter.
I see.
Which is because there's so many distilleries popping up right now, the cooperages.
Oh,
we started seeing that they were running behind every time we checked in with them and called
another month.
It was push back, and that's when we started something. We're like, we can't wait. We got to order these now.
When we started this process, it was a 2-month lead time at most of these cooperages, and now they're looking at a 5-month lead time.
You got to realize that, which a lot of people don't, I think. Maybe they do, but your barrel selection is one of the most important things you can decide. I mean, the oak, the tannins, that kind of sugar that comes from the white American oak in your whiskey is debatably 70 to 80% of your taste sometimes. I mean, you can't make a bad mash, a bad whiskey, and then put it in a good barrel and automatically get a good whiskey. But, I mean, all the pieces have to fit. But I'd say a cooperage is very an important decision.
I'd say, you could look at Buffalo Trace, and that's one of those prime examples where, the difference between, just straight up Buffalo Trace and, Pappy Van Winkle. I mean, a lot
Same
of...
company.
What's that?
Same company.
Yeah, it's the same company. Yeah. But, they're in the same facility, but it's really coming down to, the barrel selection and things like that.
For sure, and different mash bills and stuff like that. There's a lot of subtleties.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we took a long time deciding who we were going to buy barrels from, and by the time we, kind of got the money to do it from the Kickstarter or whatever, they're we're quite a ways out. But I mean, that happens to popular companies. People doing good work,
On the bright side, though, we did get to almost double the barrel order, which gets us, almost, but which gets us to a point further than we originally were going to be, and kind of stacks the deck. But I mean, whiskey production will begin after vodka is on shelves. We're not going to start producing it until the vodka label's approved and the vodka's is out there, because we need to be able to, once we start whiskey production, we need to be able to take the vodka revenues and put them into buying additional grain. Once that starts and it starts in earnest, then whiskey production will begin, and we're probably a year and a half. Well, I'm really probably a year and a half away from actually having whiskey on shelves.
We're toying with other products too, all the way along. I mean, we're trying to get a gin going, but we want our gin to have something unique to Buffalo. We're toying with things right now. Our whiskey, we're very happy with the mash bill. Our vodka, we're very happy with. Gin, we're still toying with a little bit, trying to find the right thing for us.
Your signature.
And some other things in the works too.
Are you guys pretty much open to any?
Yeah.
There's actually some rules around that, though.
Really?
There's some things we can and can't do. So we would love to do a rum if we could, but under the license that we currently exist under, which at this point is really the only thing that we can practically be under. Yeah. If we go up a license level, you have to get 6 more permits. Like, there's a separate permit for distribution and a separate permit for retail store and a separate for XYZ. Whereas this one farm distillery license allows us to self-distribute, allows us to sell here in a retail store, allows us to sell at farmers markets and state fairs, among other things. So there's advantages to being on the smallest license, but there are disadvantages in that.
There's rules, like we have to use at least 75% local products, which we love, though.
That's kind of a good thing.
We use 100.
But like rum, you couldn't make rum unless you got sugar cane or molasses, which doesn't grow up here.
No. Don't have it here.
There's no sugar cane farm in the east side yet.
So there are things that, and obviously we couldn't make, anything, it's based on agave. Anything that doesn't grow here.
Tequila or anything like that. But
I had no idea that was even.
So 75%. So for things that, like in a gin, there's botanicals that get added, and some of those botanicals might not be available here, but they don't really make up of the raw materials. They're less than 25% at that point.
That makes sense.
Of the source material, the majority of it is New York grown.
Well, say if you're using 100 pounds of grain to make that neutral spirit, and then you put a pound
it doesn't trip their radar at that point, because that it's maybe 1%
still under 75% of the local ingredients, but we're going to of the ingredients, but we're going to try to use
local. He means New York State, so it's got to be. It's a state law that we're following for that.
I see.
Yeah. So, but we're going to try to use all the be a very Buffalo centric company and try to use all the Buffalo or local kind of stuff around here that we can.
So how far away? We're recording this on the 27th of August. Roughly, how far away are you guys hoping to have the vodka? Good to go.
There's vodka in bottles ready to be sold. Ready to be sold right now.
I've seen the vodka. I mean,
we're just waiting for our label to be approved. I was on the phone with the TTB this afternoon, and
it's been a process. We'll leave it at that.
It's one of those things with so many things with this. It's been a learn as you go kind of thing.
I see.
We started submitting this label in June or mid-June of this year, and it wouldn't normally take this long. It's a lot of it just us making dumb mistakes and not knowing how it goes. And now I know. And
also with us registering with the this part of the government. That us being new.
You know what I could equate to? It's like when you're 17, 18 years old and you go to the DMV for the first time and you didn't know that you need to have car insurance or something like that, and they look at you like you just asked where the basement of the Alamo is, and they're like, get out of here, come back. And then you look at the rules and you realize that they do make sense, and we think we got everything right now. And next time, once we get rolling, everything's going to move a lot quicker and easier than this first time.
Because basically it's going to be the same basic template for the label from now on. There's going to be slight changes based on the spirit. But for the most part, there's a lot of the issues here, or a lot of the issues that people run into when they're getting a label approved like this, is they treat COLA, which is the agency that's responsible for this, treats the labeling of the product. It has two purposes. The first is to deal with what the taxation is going to be on it, based on the percentage of alcohol by volume and the actual volume of the bottle.
Yeah.
And the second thing that it deals with is the the composition of the spirit, what commodities go into it, because some of them people are allergic to. So, and that's one of the reasons. Not all of the, or that's not the only reason, but like for instance, there are people who are allergic to grain, or who have celiac, who can't have a grain-based vodka. They just can't have it. Yeah. So they're very concerned about what goes on the bottle to make sure that or that people aren't or don't get hurt. Another thing that's interesting on that is they're very concerned about things like people creating or having a company named called like Healthy. And then having their thing called Healthy Vodka, so that you're not making false claims. So it has to say Healthy Brand Vodka if it were going to, and it has to have the vodka separated enough from the word healthy so that people don't mistake it for locale.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we had to learn. We know now. Yeah, it's going to go fast now. Yeah. But the last thing you have to do is get your label approved, and then once we get our label approved, we're for sale. So hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll be,
Yeah.
It could be tomorrow.
Wow. I mean, are you guys are you guys ready? Like if it came in tomorrow, like what
we'd be up by next week.
What would be your, like, where are you guys looking to be sold at? Do you already have like places in mind?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a few start-off bars for kind of a test market.
Okay.
And then at some point we'll have a grand opening, and then we have a bunch of select bars that we're going to kind of place it in. Almost the people that want to promote us, the people want to get behind us.
Yeah. Like people that are starting to do, fancy drink menus, and they're going to give us a signature cocktail and mention on their menu that it's made from us.
Yeah.
We'll try to get to them first.
I mean,
we don't have enough spirit, and we will. And that still can only put out so much, or so much.
Yeah, we could probably make right now. Maybe if I spend a ton of time here, I put out maybe 4 or 5 cases a day.
Wow.
The reality of the fact is we don't have a big production. We have 50-gallon stills that put out even less than that. Mm-hmm. So we had to. One of the nice things is we never really had to sell. But we had to kind of pick.
It's been a common question. People ask me, like, how are you going to sell it? How are you going to sell it? And they sort of ask me, like, in a challenging way. Like, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about how am I going to make it? How am I going to keep up?
How am I going to make enough for the people that
we don't have any employees. It's like, it's I got to scrape myself up every day and try to get in here. When I don't, I fall behind. And, you know, then these two give me a weird look, like, what are you doing? Like, you got to get in there. You got to just get in and make it. It's like, I'm not... At this point, I'm not worried about selling it. Once we start, down the road, once you start dealing with a distributor and you're on the line for it.
Yeah.
Right now, since we're just making vodka, we can basically make it. It doesn't take long we're making it from wine, so it's, the worst thing I'm ever gonna have to say to somebody is, call me back tomorrow or in 2 or 3 days now. When I start making a deal with, that's for like a bar or restaurant. When I start making a deal with the distributor for hundreds of cases, down the road, then I'll be more worried about.
At the point when we would enter a distribution contract. So one of the advantages to the licenses, as I was kind of saying earlier, is it lets us self-distribute. So we can have direct contact with the on a wholesale level. So it's not like we're selling retail to bars because they can't purchase retail. But on a wholesale level, we are a wholesaler. We are a liquor distributor registered in New York. So we can actually, we can directly deliver to to bars, restaurants, liquor stores, etc. Which is nice because it allows us A, to get our bearings, and B, to set and decide what a good price is, and not have to take a distributors, they don't take their cut yet. So we can price it right to begin with. We can make sure that that it has a market. We can test and tweak, etc. And then at the point when we would enter into a distribution contract would be the point where A, we're already in the process of moving out of the space and into a bigger space and buying bigger stills. And B, we would certainly have employees at that point.
And
so we're kind of lucky we could kind of pick and choose where we wanted to put it. Like people express interest on putting us on their cocktail menu. Like those are the people that we're going to try to get it to, and then as we can, we're going to try to get it to as many places as we can. But we need to have those test markets first, and those test places to see what we can keep up with. Kind of.
It makes sense too, because a lot, like you go to like Bistro Europa or a handful of other restaurants, and they advertise like the farms that they're using. Like Tea Meadow Pork is like a brand now because
Olds Farm.
Yeah, Olds Farm and things like that. So it makes sense that a place like Vera or Mike A's or whatever would be proud to have a local brand.
And I don't want to sit on the shelf. I want to move. I would like to be in places.
And those are people
that are
who
proud
trust.
to have us. That's one of the great things about Buffalo is that we can do that here. Like I'm sure a lot of distilleries had to go out and tooth and nail sell, where we've had people come up to us, just awesome, great people being like, when can we get it? When can we get it? When can we get it? Kind of thing.
Which on some level is a function of us being drunk for like 10 years, but that's actually, I mean, it's a good thing. We've made good friends in the industry, and we've worked to establish relationships that have now, we know that there are people like at Vera, they were both our inspiration for this, and they were our biggest cheerleaders, throughout the whole process. John Carroll came in and helped us test and helped us taste and helped us to determine whether or not it was going to be a product that was saleable, et cetera. And we can now. There are people out there. There are people out there who we trust to now bring this to market, and we're fortunate in that, as Chad said.
That's awesome. So, I mean, when that starts happening, is everyone going to be kind of here a lot more than they already are? Like, I know, some of you guys have other jobs and things like that. It's kind of got to be a little tricky to.
Yeah, it's hard to say because my job is different from Tom's. Like my job is like I even print the labels and do stuff like that. So yes and no, and some of us will be delivering, and I mean Niko's job will be similar. Hopefully by that time we can have an employee or two, someday. But
I can't wait to start hiring.
You can call them an apprentice.
Right now is not the time.
But our jobs aren't always here. Even just being an ambassador of the product and sitting at the end of the bar and telling someone about it, that's work. And I mean, at the beginning, Niko and I, we wanted to do a rye whiskey, so we had to go out and get a better palate for rye whiskey. And as much as that just sounds like going out drinking, it wasn't. Like, we went out and tried every rye whiskey we could. We went to Premier and bought rye whiskey.
And it was tough because a lot of places, as you started to see this, artist and kind of spirit trend get bigger and bigger, it's been better. Like, there's bars, like, not like that I won't mention, but just that I've gone to for 15, 20 years, and I saw the same three brand, like Beam, Jameson, Jack. That's all they ever had in almost every bar. Like, other than Vera, like, now you can go just about anywhere, and you're going to see some of these, smaller batches.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
But it's great because the city kind of grew with us in that, so there was more and more available everywhere every day. Like,
it's almost like the market's been building itself for us leading up to this. Hopefully,
it definitely seems like it's really good timing.
Absolutely.
On all of that. Nice, guys. Well, I think that kind of wraps up pretty much most of it. I can't wait to see you guys on the shelves, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people excited about it. Will you guys be having tours here and things like that down the road?
For sure.
We'll be open.
And a launch party at some point. We're kind of in the planning process of it now.
Nice.
A soft launch and then a real launch party, and then tours. Yeah, hopefully weekly, and then hopefully you'll see us at the farmers markets too. Going around from Bidwell, then maybe spend a weekend in East Aurora, maybe spend a weekend in Hamburg. And,
that'd be awesome.
And the Erie County Fair next year, we can go to fairs too. We'd like to do
you can
that.
go to the fair.
Yeah, so that was part of the law that just got passed was farmers markets.
I love the idea of getting vodka at the fair.
Yeah. It's going to be super weird. I can't wait.
Just answering a lot of really awkward questions.
If we open at the farmers market, I was saying that some entrepreneur should consider like a tomato juice stand, like way down the other one.
Have various pickles and
people can take that home, and it's like your Bloody Mary is already prepared for you for the day. But the tours are going to be a huge, to jump in at the end. We're gonna do 2 to 3 weekends a month where we have tours here. People are going to be able to sign up for one. They'll be able to come through and actually see how all the equipment works, and then they'll be able to sample the products too.
Good.
So under this license, we can let people sample up to 3 products.
Nice.
A quarter shot each. So they'll actually be able to taste it and get a feel for what it's going to be like.
Awesome.
Oh, I got to run.
All right, well,
we got a delivery.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for making time for me to come down here. This is really cool talking to you, and I can't wait till you guys open up. So,
thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.